When approaching a dangerous animal such as a venomous snake or a large aggressive dog, what safety protocols should be followed to ensure the safety of the animal control officer and others in the vicinity? Discuss the role of protective equipment and risk assessment in these situations. Answer: when dealing with dangerous animals, the safety of the officer and the public must be the top priority. The following protocols should be adhered to. Risk assessment. Before approaching the animal, assess the environment, the animal's behavior and potential risks, e.g. whether terrain, nearby persons. Identifying hazards, such as poor visibility, is essential in determining the safest approach. Protective gear. Proper protective equipment should include thick gloves, snake gaiters, bite-resistant clothing, and specialized footwear. In cases of venomous animals, the use of a full-body protective suit may be necessary, depending on the animal's nature. Animal control techniques employ proper restraint techniques and tools, e.g. catch poles for dogs, tongs for snakes. The use of tranquilizers or sedation should be considered when appropriate. Emergency response plans. The officer should have a plan in place in case of injury or attack, including access to first aid kits, communication systems, and immediate medical support. Explain the key steps involved in conducting a risk assessment for a high-risk animal control situation. How can hazard management strategies help in preventing accidents during the operation? Answer: a comprehensive risk assessment involves the following steps. Hazard identification. Identify potential hazards in the environment, such as aggressive animal behavior, weather conditions, or unsafe equipment. Risk evaluation. Assess the likelihood and consequences of each identified hazard. This could involve evaluating the animal's past behavior, its species-specific tendencies, and environmental factors, e.g. proximity to roads. Control measures. Implement strategies to mitigate identified risks. These may include using proper equipment, having emergency responders on hand, and using crowd control measures to limit exposure to bystanders. Monitoring and review. Continuously monitor the situation during the operation to adapt to any changes, e.g. the animal becoming more aggressive. After the situation, review the response to improve future risk assessments. Hazard management. Hazard management strategies include controlling exposure to identified risks through the use of barriers, protective clothing, and by ensuring that only trained professionals engage with high-risk animals. Mr. Wilson, an animal control officer, has been called to a multi-residential complex where several residents have reported an increasing number of stray dogs roaming the area. Some residents have expressed concern about the dogs being a safety risk. What steps should Mr. Wilson take to address the situation, ensuring both animal welfare and public safety? Answer: Mr. Wilson should take the following steps. Risk assessment. First, assess the level of risk posed by the stray dogs. Consider factors such as the number of dogs, their behavior, aggressive or non-aggressive, and the proximity to children, elderly residents, or busy areas. Engage with the public. Communicate with residents to gather information about the dog's behavior and specific locations where the dogs have been seen. This helps to form a clear plan of action. Capture and containment. Use appropriate methods and equipment, such as catch poles or tranquilizer darts, to safely capture the dogs. If they are aggressive, ensure that a team is on hand to support and manage the situation safely. Animal welfare. Once the dogs are contained, Mr. Wilson should assess their condition. If they are in poor health, they may need to be transported to an animal shelter or a vet. Collaboration with authorities. Work with local authorities, such as the police or council officers, to address any legal or zoning issues related to strays in urban environments. Public safety measures. To mitigate further risks, Mr. Wilson could work with the building management to secure areas where the dogs were found, such as fences or gates, until the situation is under control. Why is it critical for animal control officers to wear appropriate safety gear when handling potentially dangerous animals, and what types of equipment should be included in their standard protective gear? Answer: the primary goal of safety gear is to reduce the risk of injury during animal control operations. Protective equipment should be tailored to the type of animal being handled, ensuring that the officer is shielded from physical harm, bites, scratches, or kicks, and exposure to zoonotic diseases. Key safety gear includes gloves, bite-resistant gloves to prevent scratches and bites, face shields or goggles to protect the eyes and face from animal bites or irritants, thick clothing, long sleeves, pants, and heavy-duty boots to protect against animal bites or stings. Body armor. In cases of particularly aggressive animals or venomous species, full body armor may be necessary. First aid kits. Always have access to a first aid kit in case of minor injuries. Relevant regulations. Work health and safe assure laws, which require proper protective equipment to mitigate work-related risks. Animal welfare regulations governing the humane treatment and handling of animals during control operations. What steps should an animal control officer take if they are faced with a venomous snake during an operation? How does the protocol differ from dealing with an aggressive dog? Answer: when dealing with a venomous snake, assess the situation, keep a safe distance, determine the species of the snake, if possible, and assess the level of threat based on its behavior, e.g., if it is coiled or aggressive. Call for support. Notify a trained wildlife expert or a venomous snake handler for assistance if necessary. Use of appropriate tools. Use snake tongs or a hook to safely lift and transport the snake. If tranquilizers are needed, ensure they are administered by a trained professional. Minimize risk to the public. Ensure that the area is cordoned off to prevent public access, as venomous snakes can pose a serious risk to civilians. For dealing with an aggressive dog, the protocol includes using a catch pole, muzzling, or tranquilizing the dog, and ensuring public safety through barriers. The primary difference is that dogs can be handled with more direct intervention, while snakes require specialized tools and expert handling to reduce risk. How should an animal control officer handle a situation where a resident is repeatedly complaining about a nuisance animal, such as a neighbor's cat causing damage to their property? What steps should be taken to investigate and resolve the situation? Answer: the officer should follow these steps. Investigation: speak to the complainant to understand the nature and extent of the nuisance. Document the complaints, including times of occurrence and damages. Engagement with the owner: approach the animal's owner to discuss the complaints. Explain any relevant laws or regulations regarding nuisance animals, such as restrictions on cats roaming outside or causing damage. Mediation: offer solutions such as securing the animal within the owner's property or providing guidance on better supervision. In some cases, using humane traps to catch and relocate the animal may be necessary. Legal enforcement: if the problem persists and cannot be resolved through mediation, the officer may need to enforce local regulations, which could include issuing fines or other penalties for continued nuisance behavior. Relevant legislation: local government nuisance animal laws, animal control acts regulating the behavior of pets and their owners. What are the challenges associated with urban wildlife management, and how should animal control officers address the overpopulation of certain species, e.g., pigeons, raccoons, in urban areas? Answer: urban wildlife management presents unique challenges such as overpopulation. Species like pigeons and raccoons thrive in cities due to abundant food sources and shelter, leading to overpopulation. Public safety and health: overpopulation can increase the risk of zoonotic diseases such as leptospirosis from rodents or bird flu from pigeons. To address overpopulation, officers should conduct population surveys, identify the most affected areas and species that need control, humane relocation. In some cases, animals can be relocated, but this must comply with local wildlife laws. Trapping and releasing animals in designated areas can help reduce numbers in urban zones. Public education: educate the public on proper waste management and measures to prevent attracting wildlife into homes or businesses. Relevant laws: wildlife protection acts and local urban planning regulations concerning wildlife. What emergency protocols should be in place for handling an animal outbreak, e.g., rabies or bird flu, in a community, and how do these protocols align with public health laws? Answer: during an animal outbreak, the following emergency protocols should be followed. Containment: immediately contain the affected animals to prevent the spread of the disease. This may include setting up quarantine zones. Collaboration: work with public health authorities, veterinarians, and animal welfare groups to assess the scope of the outbreak. Communication: notify the public and provide information on symptoms, prevention methods, and safety measures to prevent human-animal transmission. Treatment and control: vaccination and euthanasia protocols should be followed as required by law. In the case of rabies, animals that are exposed may be required to be put down to prevent further spread. Relevant guidelines: Public Health and Animal Disease Control Act state-specific emergency management protocols for disease outbreaks. What steps should be taken by animal control officers when responding to a report of a dog attack on a member of the public? How does the officer ensure both public safety and the welfare of the animal involved? Answer: the officer must assess the situation upon arrival, assess the injury and threat level, ensure that the victim receives medical attention if necessary, secure the animal, use appropriate equipment, such as a catch pole or tranquilizer, to secure the attacking dog while maintaining safety. Investigate the circumstances leading to the attack, gather witness statements and assess if the attack was unprovoked or if the dog was acting in defense. Legal actions: based on the severity of the attack, the dog may be quarantined or evaluated by a vet. In extreme cases, the dog may be deemed dangerous and subject to euthanasia or behavioral training programs. Public safety: ensure the area is secured to prevent further attacks and educate the public on proper dog behavior management, relevant regulations, dangerous dog laws, animal control regulations concerning aggressive animals. What specific challenges do animal control officers face in multi-residential complexes, and how should they approach these situations differently from those in single-family homes? Answer: challenges in multi-residential complexes include crowded living conditions. Pets may be housed in smaller, less secure environments, leading to more frequent escapes or aggression. Public safety, increased traffic in communal spaces. The G-hoys elevators heightens the risk of conflicts between pets and people. Property damage. Stray animals or aggressive pets can cause damage to property, and managing such incidents in a shared space requires coordinated efforts. Approach: collaboration. Work with building management to enforce rules and regulations for pet ownership, such as leash laws or restrictions on pet breeds. Community engagement. Educate residents about responsible pet ownership and proper containment practices, relevant guidelines. Local animal control laws specific to multi-residential settings, building management policies on pets in residential areas. What is the primary legal authority granted to animal control officers, and how does this authority differ from that of law enforcement officers? What legal considerations must be taken into account when exercising enforcement powers under animal control laws? Answer: animal control officers are typically granted authority by local, state, or national animal control laws, which vary by jurisdiction but generally grant officers the power to enforce regulations regarding the care, treatment, and management of animals. This includes the ability to issue fines, impound animals, and sometimes seize animals in cases of abuse or neglect. Unlike law enforcement officers, whose powers are broader and extend to criminal law enforcement, animal control officers' powers are more focused on public health, safety, and welfare of animals. Legal considerations include proper training and certification. Officers must be trained to understand their legal limits and the procedures they are authorized to follow, including obtaining warrants when necessary. Due process: officers must ensure that actions such as seizures, impoundment, or issuing fines are carried out within the bounds of the law and respect the rights of animal owners. Relevant legislation: this includes local ordinances, state animal welfare laws, and national statutes such as the Animal Welfare Act in some countries, which set guidelines on how officers should act when enforcing laws. What are the key factors that animal control officers should consider when determining the severity of fines and penalties for a violation of animal control laws? Provide examples of common violations and the associated penalties. Answer: when determining fines and penalties for animal control violations, officers should consider the following factors: severity of the violation. More severe violations, such as animal cruelty or neglect, typically result in higher fines or more serious penalties, including potential jail time. Intent: if the violation is determined to be accidental or unintentional, penalties might be less severe than in cases where there is deliberate harm to an animal. Repeat offenses. Repeat offenders may face escalating fines and harsher penalties. Local laws. Different regions may have varying fine structures, with certain jurisdictions imposing minimum or maximum penalty limits for specific violations. Examples: failure to license a pet. A minor violation often results in a fine of $50 to $100, depending on the local law. Animal cruelty. This could lead to penalties ranging from fines of $500 to several $1,000s or imprisonment, depending on the jurisdiction. Unlicensed animal breeding. In some jurisdictions, this could lead to fines of up to $10,000 and the confiscation of animals. Under what circumstances can an animal control officer seize or impound an animal, and what are the procedural requirements they must follow when carrying out such an action? Answer: animal control officers can seize or impound an animal in the following circumstances: immediate danger to public safety or health. If the animal poses an immediate risk to people, other animals, or itself, an officer can act without prior notice or a court order. Animal cruelty or neglect. If there is evidence of neglect, abuse, or lack of proper care, officers can seize an animal after following due process, including obtaining a warrant if necessary. Unlicensed or stray animals. In cases of stray animals or those without proper identification, officers may impound the animal until the owner is identified or fines are paid. Procedural requirements. Documentation. Officers must thoroughly document the condition of the animal at the time of seizure, including taking photographs if necessary, and make an official record of the action. Notice to owner. In most jurisdictions, the animal's owner must be notified of the seizure and given an opportunity to contest it in court. Holding period. The animal may be held in an animal shelter for a specified period, often 72 hours, before being released to the owner or made available for adoption or euthanasia if no owner is found. Mr. Dawson, an animal control officer, receives a call about a dog left in a car on a hot day. Upon arrival, he notices that the dog is panting heavily and there is no one in sight. The dog is in immediate distress and shows signs of dehydration. What should Mr. Dawson do in this situation, considering legal and procedural guidelines? Answer: in this scenario, Mr. Dawson should take the following steps. Immediate action for public safety. As the dog is in immediate distress and there is a risk of severe harm, Mr. Dawson is legally allowed to intervene without a warrant. His priority is the animal's welfare and public safety. He can break into the car to remove the dog following local laws regarding emergency actions. Document the situation. After removing the dog, he should document the dog's condition. Photograph the dog, record the temperature inside the car, and make note of the dog's symptoms. This documentation is essential for any future legal proceedings. Report and notify authorities. Mr. Dawson should attempt to locate the owner and report the incident to the relevant authorities, such as local law enforcement or animal welfare agencies. If the owner cannot be identified immediately, the animal may need to be impounded for its safety. Legal follow-up. Mr. Dawson should issue fines and possibly charge the owner with cruelty under relevant animal welfare laws. Depending on the severity of the dog's condition and the local laws, charges could include fines, animal cruelty penalties, or even criminal prosecution. What other key procedures and best practices animal control officers should follow when preparing to give evidence in an animal-related court case? How can officers ensure their testimony is credible and effective? Answer: when preparing to give evidence in court, animal control officers must follow these key steps. Thorough documentation. Officers should ensure all records related to the case, such as reports, photographs, and witness statements, are complete, accurate, and organized. This documentation forms the foundation of their testimony. Understanding of relevant laws. Officers should be familiar with the laws under which the violation falls, such as animal cruelty laws, licensing regulations, or other animal welfare statutes. Clear and concise testimony. Officers must be able to explain the facts of the case in a straightforward, non-emotional manner. They should avoid making speculative statements and focus on factual observations and actions taken during the investigation. Chain of custody. Officers must explain the chain of custody for any evidence, such as seized animals or property showing that it was handled in a lawful and secure manner. Preparation for cross-examination. Officers should be prepared for challenges to their testimony, including questions about their qualifications, methods, and any potential biases. Being confident, clear, and professional in court is essential for credibility. When setting up an animal shelter, what are the critical factors that must be considered in the design of the facility to ensure animal welfare and safety? Discuss how the design can impact both animal health and staff operations. Answer: in designing an animal shelter, the following factors are critical. Space and zoning. The shelter should provide sufficient space for each animal, including separate areas for different species and quarantine spaces for sick or potentially infectious animals. Poor design can lead to stress, behavioral issues, and potential spread of disease. Sanitation facilities. Proper waste disposal systems, cleaning stations, and materials that can withstand frequent sanitation are crucial to prevent contamination and the spread of disease. Ventilation and lighting. Proper airflow and natural or artificial lighting ensure a healthy environment for both animals and staff. Poor ventilation can lead to respiratory issues in animals, while inadequate lighting may cause stress and hinder the animal's ability to adjust to the shelter environment. Staff efficiency. The shelter layout should be designed for staff efficiency, allowing for smooth transitions between animal intake, care, and adoption processes. Good design can minimize staff fatigue and improve response times during emergencies. What steps should an animal control officer follow during the intake process at an animal shelter to ensure compliance with animal welfare laws and to maximize the chances of successful adoption? Answer: the intake process involves several key steps to ensure compliance and successful adoption. Assessment and identification. Upon intake, animals should be assessed for health, behavior, and identification. Microchips, tags, or other forms of identification should be checked to reunite lost pets with their owners. Health check and vaccination. Animals should receive a thorough health check, including vaccinations and parasite treatments to prevent the spread of disease within the shelter. Behavioral assessment. Animals should undergo a behavioral assessment to ensure that any special needs are addressed and to help place them in appropriate homes. Documentation. Accurate records should be maintained, detailing the animal's background, health status, and any special needs. This will aid in the adoption process and ensure that the animal is placed in a suitable home. What are the best practices for shelter sanitation and disease control to prevent outbreaks of common animal diseases, and how should these practices be communicated to staff and volunteers? Answer. Best practices for sanitation and disease control include routine cleaning and disinfection. Shelters should implement a regular cleaning schedule using appropriate disinfectants that are effective against a range of pathogens but safe for animals. Quarantine protocols. New arrivals should be quarantined for a period of time to monitor for signs of illness and prevent cross-contamination. Proper waste management. Animal waste should be disposed of promptly and safely with separate handling of contaminated materials. Staff and volunteer training. All staff and volunteers should be trained on proper hygiene protocols, including hand washing, use of personal protective equipment, PPE, and safe handling of animals to minimize disease transmission. Why is animal enrichment important in shelters, and what are the legal and ethical considerations that animal control officers must be aware of when implementing enrichment programs? Answer. Animal enrichment is vital in shelters because it helps alleviate stress, anxiety, and behavioral issues caused by confinement. Providing stimulation through toys, exercise, training, and socialization helps improve the animal's chances of being adopted. Legally, shelters have a responsibility to ensure the well-being of animals in their care, and neglecting to provide enrichment could be considered a violation of animal welfare laws. Ethical considerations include ensuring that enrichment activities are safe and suitable for the individual animal, recognizing the importance of both physical and mental stimulation to prevent behavioral deterioration. What are the key factors to consider when managing shelter staff and volunteers to ensure effective operations and animal welfare, and how should animal control officers handle potential conflicts or issues within the team? Answer. Effective shelter management requires clear roles and expectations. Each staff member and volunteer should have a defined role with clear expectations regarding duties, responsibilities, and conduct. Training and supervision. Staff and volunteers should receive comprehensive training on animal welfare laws, shelter operations, and handling animals safely. Conflict resolution. In case of conflicts, animal control officers should mediate by listening to concerns, ensuring policies are enforced fairly, and offering solutions that prioritize animal welfare and team cooperation. Explain the ethical considerations that animal control officers must keep in mind when implementing pest control strategies. How do these considerations relate to both the welfare of the animals and the local ecosystem? Answer. Animal control officers must adhere to ethical principles that ensure humane treatment of animals and consider the broader environmental impact of their actions. When implementing pest control strategies, the welfare of the animals should be prioritized. This includes using methods that minimize suffering, such as live traps or relocation, rather than lethal approaches like poisoning. Additionally, officers must consider the ecological consequences of their actions, as certain control methods may disrupt local ecosystems. For example, indiscriminate use of pesticides can harm non-target species and lead to biodiversity loss. Ethical guidelines, such as the Australian Animal Welfare Act 2002, require officers to avoid unnecessary harm and promote sustainable, humane practices. Moreover, the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act emphasizes the need to balance animal welfare with the conservation of native species, ensuring that pest control methods do not inadvertently harm the environment. Animal control officers must weigh the potential harm to both animals and ecosystems, striving to find humane, effective solutions that maintain biodiversity and ecosystem health. Mr. Thompson is an animal control officer tasked with managing a growing population of feral cats in a rural area. After conducting surveys, he identifies a significant risk to local bird species due to predation. What should Mr. Thompson consider in his strategy to control the feral cat population, keeping in mind the ethical, environmental, and legal aspects of his role? Answer. Mr. Thompson should first consider implementing a sterilization program, as this humane method will gradually reduce the feral cat population without causing unnecessary harm to the animals. Sterilization aligns with both ethical and environmental goals by preventing further reproduction while minimizing suffering. Relocation may also be considered if the new environment is suitable, though this must be done with caution to ensure it does not introduce additional ecological risks or harm to other species. Legally, Mr. Thompson must adhere to the National Feral Animal Management Guidelines, which mandate humane methods and ensure that any relocation complies with local biodiversity laws. Moreover, Mr. Thompson should be mindful of the potential impact on the bird species and ensure that his strategy does not disrupt the overall ecosystem. Regular monitoring and assessment of the program's effectiveness will help him adjust the strategy as needed. Collaboration with wildlife experts and environmental organizations is also vital to ensure the approach is both legally compliant and ecologically sustainable. In the long term, education on responsible pet ownership and the prevention of feral cat overpopulation could also reduce the need for drastic control measures. What role does animal control play in the preservation of biodiversity, and why is it crucial to balance animal welfare with conservation goals? Answer: animal control plays a pivotal role in preserving biodiversity by managing invasive species that threaten native wildlife and habitats. Feral animals, such as cats and dogs, often prey on native species, destroy habitats, and outcompete indigenous wildlife for food and shelter, leading to population decline and ecosystem imbalances. Animal control programs therefore focus on reducing or eliminating the threat posed by invasive species through humane methods such as sterilization, relocation, or controlled population management. Balancing animal welfare with conservation goals is essential because the methods used for pest control must minimize animal suffering while achieving conservation objectives. For example, controlling the feral cat population is crucial for protecting endangered bird species, but it must be done in a way that aligns with the Australian Animal Welfare Act 2002, which advocates for humane practices. Additionally, conservation laws such as the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act ensure that wildlife protection is integrated into control measures promoting sustainable management of ecosystems. Balancing these factors ensures that animal control efforts are both ethical and effective in preserving biodiversity and the long-term health of ecosystems. Discuss the concept of sustainable practices in animal control. How can these practices contribute to long-term solutions for wildlife management? Answer: sustainable practices in animal control are those that focus on long-term environmental health and animal welfare. These practices include methods like sterilization, habitat restoration, and rehabilitation rather than reliance on lethal control measures. By focusing on sterilization, animal control officers can gradually reduce the overpopulation of feral animals without causing harm. This method addresses the root cause of the issue, overpopulation, while avoiding the ethical dilemmas associated with euthanasia. Additionally, sustainable animal control involves monitoring ecosystems to assess the impact of control measures and adjusting strategies as necessary. Habitat restoration plays a crucial role in providing safe environments for native species, reducing the pressure on them from invasive animals. This approach contributes to long-term solutions by fostering biodiversity and ecological balance. By using adaptive management strategies, officers can continually evaluate the effectiveness of their practices, ensuring they remain responsive to changing environmental conditions. Laws like the National Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act help guide these practices, ensuring they comply with conservation standards. Explain the importance of ongoing education and training for animal control officers. How does this contribute to the effectiveness of their work in the field? Answer: ongoing education and training are vital for animal control officers to remain up to date with the latest methods, legal standards, and ethical considerations in their work. As animal control evolves with new research and technologies, officers must be equipped to handle emerging challenges such as managing new invasive species or implementing advanced non-lethal control techniques. Regular training ensures that officers are familiar with changes in animal welfare laws and environmental regulations, such as the Australian Animal Welfare Standards and Code of Practice for the Humane Treatment of Animals. Additionally, continuous education in stress management, leadership, and mental resilience is essential because the nature of the job can be emotionally taxing. By developing these skills, officers improve their ability to respond to complex situations, such as dealing with animal cruelty cases or managing public relations. Furthermore, training enhances the overall effectiveness of control programs by ensuring officers apply best practices such as humane methods of pest control and remain compliant with legal and ethical standards. Professional development also fosters leadership within animal control organizations, ensuring better coordination of resources and strategies. Mr. Harris has just become an animal control officer in a metropolitan area. He notices that a significant number of dogs are being left unattended in backyards, and he suspects a potential welfare issue. What steps should Mr. Harris take to address this situation, considering both legal and ethical concerns? Answer: Mr. Harris should begin by conducting a thorough assessment of the situation, ensuring he observes and documents the condition of the dogs, including signs of neglect such as lack of food, water, shelter, or veterinary care. Legally, he must adhere to the Animal Welfare Act 2002, which requires that animals are provided with adequate care and shelter If neglect is confirmed, Mr. Harris may need to issue a warning to the owners advising them of their legal obligations to care for their pets. If the situation is severe, such as the presence of malnourished or injured animals, he may need to intervene by removing the animals from the property to ensure their safety. Ethically, Mr. Harris should strive to educate the pet owners about responsible pet care, offering resources and support to prevent future neglect. While enforcing legal requirements, he must always consider the welfare of both the animals and the owners, ensuring that his actions are proportionate to the severity of the situation. If the situation involves a large number of neglected animals, collaboration with local animal welfare organizations and shelters may be necessary to ensure the animals are rehabilitated and rehomed where possible. What are the potential impacts of overpopulation in domestic and feral animals on local ecosystems, and how can animal control officers mitigate these effects? Answer: overpopulation in domestic and feral animals can lead to significant environmental disruption. Feral animals, such as cats, dogs, and rabbits, often prey on native species, contribute to habitat destruction, and spread diseases which can severely impact local ecosystems. For instance, feral cats are known to decimate bird populations, particularly in areas where native species have no natural defenses. In addition to predation, overpopulation can result in overgrazing, leading to the destruction of plant life and soil erosion. Animal control officers can mitigate these effects by implementing sterilization programs to reduce reproduction rates in feral populations. Ethical considerations require these programs to be humane, avoiding the use of lethal measures whenever possible. Officers can also collaborate with wildlife experts to assess the ecological impact of their control measures and adjust strategies as needed. Education programs targeting the public on responsible pet ownership can help prevent the abandonment of animals and reduce the pressure on local ecosystems. Legal frameworks such as the Feral Animal Control Program and the National Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act guide officers in managing invasive species in an ethical, legal, and environmentally sustainable manner. How does emotional resilience factor into the role of animal control officers, and what strategies can officers use to maintain their mental health while dealing with challenging situations? Answer: emotional resilience is essential for animal control officers as they often deal with distressing situations, including animal cruelty cases, euthanasia, and public confrontations. The emotional toll of witnessing animals suffering and managing difficult public interactions can lead to burnout and compassion fatigue. To maintain mental health, officers can utilize coping strategies such as mindfulness, peer support, and regular debriefing with colleagues or supervisors. Seeking professional counseling is also an important strategy for officers facing ongoing emotional strain. Officers can also benefit from training programs in stress management and emotional regulation, which equip them with techniques for maintaining composure in high-pressure situations. By cultivating emotional resilience, officers are better able to handle the stresses of their role, ensuring that they can continue providing high-quality service to animals and the public. Additionally, animal control agencies can promote a culture of support and well-being by ensuring that officers have access to resources and training that address both their emotional and physical health. This holistic approach helps officers stay focused and effective in their work while safeguarding their own mental well-being. Discuss how animal control officers can contribute to improving community awareness about animal welfare and responsible pet ownership. What strategies could be effective in fostering public engagement? Answer: animal control officers can play a crucial role in raising community awareness about animal welfare and responsible pet ownership through education and outreach programs. By hosting workshops, school visits, and public seminars, officers can inform the public about the importance of spaying and neutering, proper pet care, and the legal responsibilities of pet ownership. Officers can also distribute educational materials, such as brochures or online resources, to reach a broader audience. Collaborating with local veterinarians, animal shelters, and advocacy groups can amplify these efforts. Social media campaigns and public service announcements can also be effective in reaching younger, tech-savvy audiences. Additionally, officers can engage with communities through events like adoption drives or pet health clinics, providing opportunities for hands-on learning and direct interaction. By fostering positive relationships with the public, animal control officers can build trust and create a more supportive environment for managing local animal-related issues. Encouraging responsible pet ownership through community engagement helps prevent the overpopulation and neglect of animals, leading to better outcomes for both animals and the community. What legal and ethical responsibilities do animal control officers have when dealing with wildlife conservation, particularly in cases where wildlife may conflict with human activities? Answer: animal control officers have the legal responsibility to protect wildlife under laws such as the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, which ensures the conservation of native species and their habitats. Ethically, officers must balance the needs of wildlife with human interests, using methods that minimize harm to animals while addressing conflicts. For example, when wildlife, such as kangaroos or wombats, encroach on urban areas, officers may need to relocate the animals or implement barriers to prevent human-wildlife conflict. However, these actions must be carried out in line with legal frameworks that protect species and their habitats. Relocation efforts must ensure that animals are not placed in areas where they may pose a threat to other species or ecosystems. Officers should also educate the public on coexistence strategies, such as using wildlife corridors or maintaining natural habitats to reduce conflicts in the first place. Additionally, they must adhere to ethical guidelines that prioritize non-lethal control methods and consider the long-term welfare of both wildlife and the community.